All right, I-10 by 10, right? Let me turn on my mic here. Make sure you start on time. Testing. Am I super loud? Can you hear me? Keep it at this volume. So what I am going to do is put my timer on because I can get like a long-winded preacher here. So make sure I stay on time. Couple more stragglers. Come on in the room. This is where you want to be, I promise. So welcome. My name is Joan Bockham. Rock'em Sock'em Bockham. I go by Joni. And today I'm going to be talking to you all a little bit about leadership engagement, how to lead yourself well, so therefore you can lead your teams well. So before we hop into that, I just want to introduce my family. Here's my husband, John, and my bonus son, Alondro. This was us downtown Pittsburgh on Strawberry Way, down on Penn Ave, just taking some photos last year. So they're why I do it. They like to travel, they like stuff, and I'm the sugar mama, so I gotta deliver the bacon. So yeah, come on in, there's a couple seats up front too, guys, so you don't have to stay there. And as like I said, my team to tell you that's my timer to make sure I don't go on forever and ever. I really enjoy leadership. Just a little bit about myself. Director of Continuous Improvement for DFA. My background is in industrial engineering, so processes are just my thing. I love to make stuff be better, more efficient, faster, quicker, and that's not by eliminating people, but how do I improve their skill sets in order for them to be the best assets for the company. So leadership is one of those pieces that I like to really deep dive into, and by the end of this you'll see a spotlight on one of my mentees. Her name is Jessie from Missouri at one of our larger plants. And I'm taking her through this program, so I'll just show you kind of like real time how this works out. So we'll talk today about building trust. How do we have effective communication? And then it's all about understanding yourself so that you can be a better leader. So first things first, one of my favorite quotes from Edward Deming, again being from an industrial engineering background, talks about it's not enough to do your best. You have to know what to do and then do your best. Right? So often we go take off running, whether it's even leading a new team if you were put into that position and you weren't really ready for it. And this was myself several years ago. I won't say forever ago, right? I'm not that old, but seems like forever. When I started out at Kroger, and I had a boss, Rudy Quick. He'll be watching this later. And it was my first time at bat, first time leading people and others. And I pretty much failed at that opportunity. I kept coming to him every day after day. Hey, Rudy, they're not listening. I need them to do this, and this, right? I had that one-track engineering mind, but I didn't have a people mind and what that should look like. And I remember him handing me my first leadership book by John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And the very first one that popped out to me, that stood with me and still to this day, is the law of the lid. Right? I can only give my people, lead my people, show my people, train my people to the lid that I have. And at that moment, I realized I was pretty much like a 5 or below. So therefore, that was one of the reasons why my people weren't moving in the direction that I needed them to do. So the most difficult part of leadership is leading yourself. So if you're not leading yourself well, it's going to be very hard to lead other people, especially in excellence, which is what we want to strive to do. So one thing I like to say is get out of bed and put on your aura. So we got to drop the blame, the excuses, the denial, why it's not working, why people aren't doing what you need them to do, why you can't do what you need to do. I don't have enough time. I don't communicate well. People don't understand me. And really put on that aura of ownership and responsibility and accountability. And all of that becomes from leading yourself well. And as an engaged leader, I always tell my mentees, folks that report into me, stay in the middle, stay down the middle. because that's where you're going to be able to maintain your working relationships, but then also meet the results and the performance that you're being asked to do. So if I'm being assertive, direct, clear, respectful, and firm, I'm pretty sure in my mind I should be able to tell you or have any type of conversation that's needed. It's when I veer too far to the left or the right, I'm sorry?
Is this presentation going to be available?
It is. This presentation is available. If you got that email from Visa, it's in the link, and it will be available in PDF form. So, being too aggressive or being too submissive, right? We have some people we let run over us. You get those supervisors that come to you and they're saying, nobody listens to me. You told me to do this, no one's listening. And you go out to the floor, you might go out there and you try to see what's going on, and the people are like, well, I did what I want to do, and he doesn't make me do it, so I'm not going to do it. And then you get too far to the left, and you have the leaders that are barking orders. You're going to do it because you're going to do it my way. And we're going to talk a little bit about positional authority leadership versus being passionate and wanting to lead others. So one way, again, is to stay in the middle. That's what you want to do. So here we are talking about whether or not I'm a leader who actually wants to do it. I'm very passionate about leadership. I went and got further education in organizational leadership from Liberty University. And really, once I got that book, I deep dived into leadership altogether. So although I work with others to improve processes, I do it a lot through leading people, because they're the ones that are close to it every day. They're the ones that touch our equipment. They're the ones that create and do the things that we need them to do. So if we equip them, they're better apt to be able to lead and do the things we need them to do. So we want to move from just being in that positional authority position. That's what people don't listen to. The person that's just out there waving their hand and fingers around and telling people what to do. But they want someone out there who can come with them, who can lead with them, who can walk with them, show them instead of telling them, right? So that mentoring and that coaching mentality and having that passion to show people a vision and a strategy, because people follow those who can actually lead them in that direction. But if you're very short-sighted, have that fixed mindset instead of a growth mindset, people are more apt to kind of stay away and not really, go off and do their own thing. You'll see a couple of quotes in my presentation from Craig Rochelle. I really like him. He's pastor of the largest growing church in the U.S., Life Church. And he's very heavily big in leading his teams, which is why he's able to open campus after campus after campus, because he's equipping people to lead. And he said, you can have control, or you can have growth, but you can't have both. And I truly believe that. Because if we're growing, myself, and if I'm growing my team, we're automatically going to get to our destination. But if we so focus on those little and small, minute things, that's when the train usually gets off of the track. Now, this is one presentation of several that I do within a leadership series. We're not going to get into all of it today, but this one will talk about how when you know that you're self-aware, you have empathy about yourself, and then you have that confidence, you're able to actually influence people, which is the leadership portion, and then you're actually able to make some impact, which is what gets you the results and drives towards those things that you need to do for your company. That's leadership engagement, according to me. So when I put those three pieces together, it's leading me towards what I need to happen. It's going to give me that impact I'm looking for. So a little bit again, leaders get better when everyone gets better. You'll hear a lot of this in presentation talking about servant leadership. How can I serve the people that I work with? How can I be a better leader myself? So in that self-confidence, you know your own abilities and your own strengths. Because if you don't know what you're good at, how can you harness what those look like? If you don't know where you have gaps, how do you know where to go build from? So we gotta have a baseline, including for yourself and awareness. So sometimes the thing that I always recommend for leaders is to take a SWOT analysis for yourself. What are your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Are you weak in an area in, like financial acumen, right? Start understanding what parts of the business do I have a gap in, and then what do I need to go build on? And becoming self-aware I'm really big on my mentees and folks that report into me on those self-awareness. One that I'm leading right now in a small group that's going very well, and I really like it, is the Enneagram. Who's familiar with the Enneagram? What number are you? You're a 3? Oh, the performer. Okay. How about you? You think you're a 9? Okay, the peacemaker. I'm an 8. I'm a challenger. If people are familiar with the social styles, I'm a driver. I'm an expressive driver. Expressive, as you can see. An expressive driver. So understanding who you are, now you can better lead other people. So if you know that you're very direct, like myself, if you know that you're very firm, like myself, if you know that you're going to be able to kind of tell people this is what it is, and you don't have really all the fluff or take a long time, land the plane to get there, you're able to explain that to the people you work with, so then they're not taking it personal. They're not thinking you're being hard on them, right? So as you're better to understand who you are, then you can better lead your teams. Does that make sense? And then you also know a self-efficacy, the belief that whatever comes our way, we can handle it. And this is where I was saying there's other presentations I do about feedback, conflict resolution. How often do we destroy relationships because we didn't have proper feedback? Because we didn't have proper conflict. And healthy conflict should be happening on a regular basis, because if it's not, that means someone's probably lying, right? I'm not telling the truth, or they're not telling the truth. Because we all think differently. We all work differently. So we should be able to work with one another to understand what that looks like. So once you start putting all 3 of these pieces together for yourself, you can then build a super team around you. Then we get into those other pieces of that pictorial I showed you, influence, the result of purposeful, thoughtful action. That means I'm leading with intentionality. So that means I put a plan together for the day. I thought about what needed to happen as far as results in production, or what I needed to strategize with if I'm on a corporate level, what my team needed to accomplish to meet the EBITDA for the for your company, whatever that looks like. But that means you were very purposeful and thoughtful when you went to go do it. Then you had intention, and that means I proceeded with forethought rather than just a reaction. So another leader here, I was in his training earlier, he talked about understanding what that looks like before you go out there. Understanding who your team members are before you present information to them, right? You're taking the time to understand what I need to do before I go do it. That goes back to that quote with Edward Deming. And then I can make the impact that I'm looking for. So then we don't get upset. We don't get weary. This is where a lot of times teams quit, right? We have people who don't want to show up to meetings anymore. We have people who don't want to be a part. They don't want to offer their advice because what do they say? Well, you guys aren't going to do anything anyway. Nothing's going to happen anyway. So then we start to lose our people. So this is why leading well is not about enriching yourselves. It's about empowering others and bringing them into the fold. So what is it? I pulled some of this content from the book Influencer. That's a very good book that really deep dives into a lot of the pieces that I just kind of went over. And it really talks about 3 key pieces to be able to influence your people. And number 1, it's understanding your why. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why do we show up every day? It's not for a paycheck. We already know that, right? It's really reaching beyond that. And it's really explaining to your team members, this is why we show up. This is why we do what we do. And whatever that looks like for yourself, for your team, needs to be a direct reflection of what that looks like for your company. So if that's cascading and pulling together, then everybody can show up with the same purpose and be 100% out on the floor, out in the whatever type of industry you're in every single day. Number 2, we got to exhibit those vital behaviors we want people to see. So if you have leaders who are constantly unprepared, yelling at employees, they don't know what they're doing. There's nothing worse than having a leader, especially in an area where all the employees think they're smarter than they are, right? How many times have you worked for someone who was not the brightest cookie in the jar, right? It's annoying. You're like, why should I listen to you? You don't even know anything. I've been there. But it also taught me a very good lesson on how to move forward with intentionality and with purpose. And number 3, it's engaging 6 sources of influence, which I'll get into a little bit here in a second. But leadership habits, you guys know what these are. Making decisive decisions, taking immediate action, making sure we do SMART goals, which we're going to get into. So a lot of this stuff may be review, but it's how do I start to really mix it all together that makes for a good plan to lead yourself well and to lead others well. So that clear, compelling goal, that's your why. It has to be clear. So I know why I showed up is to ensure that we give people nutritional dairy food and make it readily available for them. I'm just talking Dairy Farmers of America. That's my why. So if that's my why, I have to make sure that the food is safe to eat, meaning I'm out on the floor making sure I'm doing everything possible to ensure that the food is safe. I want to make sure that it's quality product, right? Something that I would buy if I went to the store and purchased it. So that means I'm following all the rules. I'm making product to spec. If it's out of spec, I'm doing something about it. So when they understand that clear, compelling why, what that goal is, then they can actually go out armed with some tools in order to work their best possible job. Does that make sense? Number 2, we talked about exhibiting vital behaviors. This is, again, this seems pretty mundane, but you'll be surprised how many companies I've worked with, because I also have a business where we don't do basics. We don't communicate well. People think they said something, but when they walked away, everyone in the room got a totally different message. So sometimes we're not checking in, just even to make sure that we're giving people effective communication, expecting and driving peer-to-peer support. That was another one I struggled with when I first got into the industry. I'm a doer. Where's all my doers in the room? We don't stop, I'm just doing. That was me. So sometimes, because that is my personality, I have to learn how to stop and make sure there's people beside me and not behind me. So making sure that we have peer-to-peer support becomes very, very important. That also will start to destroy those silos. So people don't feel like they're working alone, in buckets by themselves. Following prescribed processes and procedures. Sometimes we just need to color in between the lines. This is how we have to do it. This is what it is every single time. We want folks to have autonomy. We want people to be able to obviously think outside the box. But there's some things that we just don't follow. That's our own policies. I know one thing we struggle with, we had a biostream mapping exercise this year for our supply chain, and we found out that, this is pretty simple to share, we were offering customers timelines in order to get them product in which we couldn't even meet at the plant. Sure, we'll get that to you in 30 days. So after we mapped it out, we found out it takes 67 days. Doesn't make sense, right? So we're not following our own policy. I'm like, well, guys, how did we get there? If you know that it takes this long, right? We follow everything through the value stream. They're like, yeah, we know, but that's what we're telling them. We're coloring outside the lines of our own prescribed processes and procedures. Sometimes we got to make sure we stick to that and understand what that looks like. Using all your skills acquired and obtained to enhance the customer business experience. So keeping a growth mindset. I should always want to be learning more. A couple of things I do with my folks, my CI leaders and other, our management training program participants. I send bi-weekly book summaries so they can continue to learn something new. I tell my mentees, you guys have to read books once a quarter and then send me an assessment on what that looked like and how you want to practically use it. They have to listen to podcasts. They have to be learning, right? Law of the lid. I need you to be ever increasing that lid. So if you're at 5 this year, we need to set a target to be at a 6 by the end of it. Whatever that looks like. So we have to get people out of the idea that I learned this thing one time and then that's it. We always have to be learning. And give the power for your folks to take ownership of your department and areas. You talked about failing fast. Right? It's okay to fail fast, learn from your mistakes, and then move forward. But we got to give folks the opportunities to do that. So they say if you're not making mistakes, what are you doing?
You're not trying.
You're not trying. So he talked about that this morning. Give the authority for your people to raise the flag when things are not going well. How often do they keep running when we're running something bad? Right? I've had to go out there and, guys, time out. It's not going out the door anyway. Like, what are we doing, right? But they don't understand that they have the ownership and the ability to pull the cord as Toyota, right? Production system. They have the ability to pull the red cord. But a lot of them don't know that because we don't communicate effectively. Right? Simple things. So giving our teams that ownership to be able to do that. And then number 3, engaging those 6 sources. So we talked about it. This is all coming together, explaining, living out the clear, compelling goal. If the clear, compelling goal is quality, food, safety, and whatever the company decides that's what it is, that's what we got to live out every day. So we can't tomorrow say, sometimes it's okay for you to open the machine to clear a jam so we can keep running. No. If safety is our clear, compelling goal, it has to be the same every single day. And we have to be okay following up with our people on that. That peer-to-peer goal alignment. Giving each other the ability to, hey, you can come say something to me, and I'm not going to blow up. I'm not going to tarnish the relationship. I'm going to take the feedback, and then we're going to get better. So making sure it's an environment where we can all talk to one another, give feedback to one another, and be focused on the goals. That's why we're here. My goal, 1 comes into 2. Number 3, coaching and mentoring. Continuing with that growth mindset, keeping people moving forward, propelling forward in a momentum, so they're not just standing still. So I don't know if I have this quote in there, but I always tell my CI teams in plants, the worst place you could be is where you were last year. Don't be in the same place. Personally, as a team or as a company, we should be moving forward. So help people take those steps in the right direction. Be authentic and be open. A lot of people are even scared to take those next steps and take that ownership out there because they don't think you're an authentic leader. Right? You say one thing to them, say something else to your peers. You tell them one thing, they see you go do another thing. So you got to live it out, walk it out the same every single day. In front of them and when you're not in front of them. Because somehow they seem to find out, right? Like you was at such and such last weekend. Like, how did you know that? Like, you come in, so believe me, they find out. I don't know how they find out, but they find out. Use the incentives available to you. So it's okay for me to say, hey, you got to read a book every quarter, but I send them the book, right? I'm also doing my part to help them grow. I send them to seminars. If they say they need better training in Excel, I set up the class for them. That's what a leader does. We remove obstacles and we support our people. But we can only do that through action. So we have to be action-based leadership, servant-based leadership. Practice using the tools. So if they need that training like I just spoke about, or again, I can't help you, lead you. If you're a 3, I need to know that you're a performer. So you like gold stars, right? That's how I have to help lead him. You did a great job this week. Give him a task list. He's going to run after that at 1,000, right? For me, meh. Tell me I'm in charge though and I can lead like 12 teams, because you're awesome like that. I'm going to be like, yeah, I can do that. Run after it. So you got to understand who you're leading so you can lead them properly, right? And then there's the 9. They don't care. But not because they don't care, they just generally like, you tell me what to do, I'll do it. Right? So just understanding those dynamics so that you can lead your team. And then 6, seeking out opportunities to improve in their capabilities. I am a stickler for one-on-ones. That's how I know how things are going. That's how I know where you need help. That's where I know where you're struggling. That's where I know you're doing well. So you have to check in with your people. A lot of people don't do this kind of leadership because it takes time. You have to be passionate about it. You have to care about it. You have to really live it. And it does. I have about 4 or 5 one-on-ones every week. Guess what? I don't have any direct reports. These are people that I'm pouring into that want to be better. They want to grow. And because that's something I'm interested in, I'm willing to do it. So for your own people, you have to do those weekly one-on-ones or bi-weekly one-on-ones. I do bi-weekly with my boss. So every 2 weeks, right? But whatever that looks like, because you got to keep that loop of feedback going. Even for you, one of the questions on my one-on-one guidelines is, how can I help you? Where have I been not meeting your expectations or meeting your needs as a leader? Because I need to know too. So it's not just them, get better, get better, get better. It's how do I get better too? Make sense? Yes, yes.
Is it okay if we maybe take a second? Could you tell us a little bit more about?
Oh, for sure.
one-on-one structure?
I can. So, for the people that I mentor, I actually have a list of questions that talk about, like the number one, the first question is what did you accomplish this week? What did you do in reference to a training program or X, Y, and Z that I have set up for you? What were some of your frustrations you had this week? And your challenges? Knowing that those are two different things, as in what did you attempt to do and didn't go well versus I couldn't do this because of this. I talked about those two questions. How can I help you? What is it that I need to do for you? And then the very last question on there is a philosophy I teach about 5-3-1. Know my top 5, focus on 3, fix 1. So I always have them prioritizing what they need to be doing each week and what that needs to look like. Because you can't, as Greg Brown, Kroger, another famous quote, you can't boil the ocean. That's what he used to tell me, because I used to come in there like, because I'm an 8, less for intensity, right? I want to do so much. Everything's broken. I want to fix it tomorrow. He's like, can't boil the ocean, Joni. Relax. It's going to be okay. We take one thing at a time. So 5-3-1. Know my top 5. Focus on 3. Fix 1. So they send that to me. They're required to send that to me at least a day or 2 before the one-on-one so that I can prepare. So I will read through it. I will focus on anything that I need to do. So if I see that they're struggling with self-management, because you can't manage time. I don't call it time management. So if I see they're struggling with that, I may come to the table with tools. I may come to the table already prepared to talk about how to help them prioritize, right? So again, I have to be a good leader too. And then once we meet, we walk through that, and it's their meeting. I tell them, say, hey, so you're on, go ahead. So they know exactly, they follow their guideline. So here's what I worked on this week, here's some things I'm struggling with. I may pause, ask some questions. And again, because I've prepped, I'm gonna already have feedback ready for them, what that looks like. And then we end our meeting with action plans to move forward. And then that cycle repeats. And that's worked out very well. Now, for instance, you'll see about Jessie here in a couple seconds. She's now implementing that with her direct reports. She's already explained how this guy has already improved 50% before where he was, because he said nobody paid attention to what he did. He said, I just show up, do my job every day, right? Again, not taking interest. But now, when someone's actually paying attention, asking you questions, helping you lead the way, giving you the resources, incentives, the six influences I can do, that's when he really got involved. Sound good? Yeah. Awesome. Excellence requires more than managing the details well. It's about adding value above and beyond. And again, so others can do the same. So flex your staff. I just talked about that a little bit. When you start to understand your people better, you will approach them differently. Think about your kids. You can't talk to your kids all the same way, I'm sure, right? We have some kids that are like, Dad, what's up? Yeah, and then there's the one you have to go knock on the door and it's like, where have you been for 3 days, right? So it's about understanding your people. Lead by example, serve others, go first. They don't see you doing it, they're not doing it. Doesn't matter how many times you keep saying it, doesn't matter how you keep harping on it. micromanaging on it. They'll only do it when you're in their face, and that's it. So we have to lead by example. And become a self-starter using the skills that you learned. So if I have people deep diving into the Enneagram, well, you keep using that as an example, I then expect them to actually learn about it and then to actually utilize it, approach people knowing what that is, and then kind of speak the language. If I send you to an Excel class, I expect to start seeing some things that are coming through and some pretty sweet, mighty, pivot tables. I want to see some pretty slick graphs coming out of you, coming out the week, right? So you got to practice using the skills that you're learning. There's no point in going to all these conferences and doing all these great things and then you don't do anything with it. That's completely useless. It's a waste of your time and money, right? Deal with issues head on. Determine root causes and implement a solution for correction. I'm the director of continuous improvement. I'm very adamant about finding root causes. People hate me when I'm going through the root cause process because I'm like, okay, so help me understand how we got there. Okay, great, so we're there, and then what led to that? And then who was involved? Okay, well, but then what did they say? And they're like, the machine broke. Okay, but we got there though, guys. There's a way we got there. So we gotta start digging deep with our people. We can't just say, Travis doesn't know, stealing all your material here. Travis doesn't know how to read the room and he's going out there and people aren't paying attention. It's okay if I've recognized that, then I need to get Travis some help with emotional intelligence. He needs to understand how to discern social environments, social awareness, personal awareness, what that looks like simultaneously, okay? And then acknowledge, but do not lead by emotions. So I kind of have to give you this quick story. So I'm an 8, my husband is a 4. The 4 on the Enneagram is known as the romantic or the individualist. Their whole life is in an emotion, if that makes sense. Do you have any 4s in your life? Everything's an emotion. They feel everything. Okay, so my husband feels everything. I feel nothing. Well, I take that back. I'm learning to feel. He is forcing me to feel. But
knowledge.
yes, exactly. So I'm learning to feel because my feeling center of intelligence has been repressed my whole life because I'm a doer. And my mom was like, you're gonna do, single mom, right? It's like, you're gonna make a life for yourself and you're gonna work and you're gonna do what you need to do and you're not gonna wait on anybody to do it and you're gonna go after it and you're gonna get like 12 degrees and you're gonna do it in like 5 years. And so it's like, I'm going through life full blast. So taking the time, and this is important and I'm staying here, is because people need to be acknowledged when they're feeling something. Especially if they're out there and they're like, I'm overwhelmed, there's too much. People are always coming to me about this, or it's always a problem out here, it's always a fire. And then especially if you're a driver leader, your first inclination is to, okay, that's great, but how do we fix the problem? Okay, that's great, but how do we move forward? We have to learn to stop and acknowledge. That sucks. It seems like you're very, pout. You got a lot of stuff pout on you out there. They're gonna be like, yeah, and then they're gonna keep going. Something I don't really talk too much about, but I'll get into a little bit, is you gotta let people empty their bucket. So we're gonna acknowledge that, but we don't lead by it. And we have a lot of leaders who lead by emotions, right? Something blew up and then they immediately shut it down. Wait, do we need to shut down? So sometimes we go too extreme. Remember I talked about being in the middle. Too far left, too far right. So I lead well through self-management, and that's the ability to plan and control how I spend the hours in my day effectively to accomplish the things that I need to accomplish. Because that's another term you hear a lot, right? I'm too busy. When I hear someone tell me they're too busy, my first question is busy doing what? They can never answer. I'm just busy. But people need to start to take stock and say, what is it that I'm doing that's taking up my time? And this involves juggling between, look, I'm just stealing all your stuff here, balancing the balancing acts, right? Of understanding work, home, social life, hobbies, because we do have lives outside of work. I'm a very busy person too. I'm very heavily involved in church, so I got small groups, I got women's leadership ministry, like there's a whole lot, plus I'm director of continuous improvement. Then I got 4 mentees that I picked up and put on my shoulder even though nobody asked me to do that, right? So it's all about balancing what that looks like. And that's how you have to first start to self-manage yourself, because if you're not managing yourself, you're not leading well. Because things are kind of out of sorts, if that makes sense. So a couple of things. This is here, you can take a picture, you'll see it in the actual PDF. And actually, Jessie asked me to add this because it was very influential for her. It wasn't in the original presentation. She talked about, she's like, hey, you gotta put something in there about self-management, time management. She was like, because that was probably the number one thing that helped me really start moving forward and understanding that. And this is a couple of the whole list that I have, but delegating tasks. How many of us in here don't like to delegate? I don't, mostly because I don't think they're going to do it right. Had to learn how to work on a team, right? We got to delegate. And then we got to give people the space to do it their way. Whew. How many threes fell out with that one? Or, so activity is not accomplishment. That goes back to that busyness. What are you busy doing? Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive or efficient or effective. Do one task at a time. It's better to be effective at one thing than be efficient at many. How many masters of none do we have? We have, vast amounts of knowledge of a lot of things, but you really don't excel at one. Okay? Takes less than a minute to complete it. Just do it. Stop putting it off. Great procrastination. One thing I love, a lot of my girlfriends have stolen from me. I always tell them, think about how do you automate, delegate, eliminate, or simplify something, right? How many people get their groceries delivered? I do. Exactly, right? It makes more sense. Automate it. Hey, hubby, how many husbands have honey-do list? Yep. Exactly, all of them. That's right. What can I delegate and take off my plate that I don't need to do?
Nothing takes less than a minute.
That's true. You got me. Or simplify. Does it have to be that difficult? And again, I come back to because that's the way I would like it done, but somebody else can get it done a lot quicker, very simpler. And then I love to do the matrix, importance versus urgency. Does it have to be now or can I do it later? A lot of people overwhelm themselves with anxiety because they think everything has to be done right now. So-and-so told me that they needed to. Another big lesson I learned when I first started, Don Krapinski. I know it's a great name, right? He was the scary boss. Scariest boss I ever had. And again, first job out, this is before Rudy got there. I kept coming to him like, Rudy, I have so much to do. Like, so-and-so asked me to do this, so-and-so asked me to do this in this department. Now, mind you, I was the reliability maintenance engineer in the plant. I have to do this, he was like, wait. He's like, did I ask you to do all of that? And I'm like, no, you didn't. He was like, when you realize who your boss is, that's when you'll be successful. Now get out. I was like, so then I bawled my eyes out, called my mom, and I was like, you know what I mean? So get out. She was like, well, what did he say? When I realized who my boss was, I'd be successful. And I was like, a couple days later, light went off. And I realized that I don't have to take on everything everybody gives me just because they told me I had to do it. Because it wasn't coming from him. But how many times do we really stop ourselves in our tracks? Because nope, I got this to do, and we're writing it down. We don't let other people solve their problems, we just pick their monkeys up, which I'm gonna talk about here in a second. So these ones are pretty straightforward, but often overlooked or skipped is we don't define roles and responsibilities for our people. We skip it. So we gotta make sure that they understand, here's the part that I play, here's the lane I need to stay in. Because if we don't give them the lanes to stay in, they'll be all over the place. And Bobby will be doing Travis's job, and Travis will be doing Joel's job, and Joel won't be doing nobody's job because he's just sitting in the corner hiding in plain sight, hoping nobody asks him to do anything because 2 other people are doing his job for him. And that's because we failed to roll out roles and responsibilities. Success is impeded when people are unclear of who is who and what is what. It slows us down. It really does. Because they're like, well, did you do it? No. Well, did you do it? No. And then we're sitting at the meeting going down the action list plan and no actions have actually gotten completed or crossed off. So we got to be clear on that. Clarity to prevent dissension, sabotage, and performance interference. And it can be done, formally or informally, but it has to be done. And then here's the kicker. We got to make sure we communicate it to everybody. Because even if you tell Joy, hey Joy, you're the new sanitation manager, it's your job to make sure the plant stays clean. If I didn't tell everybody else that Joy was now in charge of cleaning stuff, what's going to happen when Joy comes around and says that's not clean enough? Yeah. They're going to say, get out of here, I know what I'm doing. Don't talk to me. And Joy's like, I'm just trying to do my job. So we got to make sure, even if we're having those personal conversations about roles and responsibilities, we communicate to the bigger group so that everybody understands what that looks like and that they don't push back on him, or if he starts to have trouble, we can follow up appropriately. So we got to take into account personalities, motivations, individual styles, attitudes, if we want to have people moving in the right direction. Play to the strengths of the team. Jim Collins, good to great. We got to have the right people in the right seat on the bus. Because if we don't, we have chaos, right? And then how to cross-train and cross-integrate for flexibility. So we can't just have Joy being this, and I'm sorry, your name's Joy today, being the only person who understands our sanitation functionality. We need to have someone else who understands it, because if Joy, and I like to use this in my training, gets hit by a beer truck, then what? Now the plant goes to heck because nobody else knew. So we got to make sure we cross-train and cross-integrate. Again, pretty straightforward, goal planning and alignment. The how, key process indicators, going back to that top 5. Don't give people everything. Give them bite-sized pieces. That's how they're able to not get overwhelmed. So don't be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. That's one of my favorite quotes. People are like, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. And it's like, okay, but did we actually do any of the work that was needed to get there? And they're like, no. Okay, well, you're not going to be skinny because you started working out yesterday. Some people think that, though. Because I eat one good salad and I'm like, oh, I look like Beyonce. And it's like, no, you don't. Stop playing. So we got to go see, or Gimba, if I have any CI buffs in the room. You got to go to where there you go. Go to where the value is taking place, where the work is taking place. Another quote I like to use is, inspect what you expect. It makes no sense to throw things out there, new standards, new policies, new procedures, new training, new people, if you don't go out there and see what they're doing. We got to live outside of the conference room, live outside of the office. Even if you're in other departments. I encourage financial team, whole front office people, go out there, go in the warehouse. You got to deal with correcting all this stuff. You should go out there and see how the process works. Those people welcome it. Because as soon as they see those folks, they're like, oh, let me tell you how this doesn't work. Let me tell you how I would like to see this. They're waiting to tell you solutions and recommendations. I tell people every year, I don't have to work hard to get my 15 million because the employees already give me all the ideas that I need to go work on at every single plant. It's easy. It really is. We already know what we need to do. Go ask the people. Gimba. Implementing visual management. People need to see progress. I think you also talked about that. They need to be able to see how they're doing, or if they're not doing well. So we have these big, huge KPI boards in our plants. Everybody has them. They're standardized. Has a big milk truck on it. Helps them to see exactly how we're doing with safety, quality, service, people, and cost. If I said that twice, maybe. But there's 5 of them, I promise. So it lets them know how they're doing. So when they see something red, they're like, oh, hey, supervisor, what do we do? Why is this red? How do we get back to green? That's what you want. How do we get back to green? Because they need to know that we're not doing well or if something's not going the way that it's supposed to. SMART goals, pretty straightforward. I won't stay long on this because I know that's probably a good tool that everybody uses. So don't skip over that. So if you're telling people they need to, I'll go back to CI, you need 2.5% of your operating budget for cost savings every year. We actually need specifics though. Need you to reduce waste in X department by 30% by March, right? Make sure we're getting more specific with them so that they know exactly what they need to run after. We talked about communication. Frustration happens when my experience didn't line up with my expectation. Happens all the time. So these are just some quick tips on how you can start to set expectations with your teams. Because so many times we forget. We just expect, well, you should know that. You should know that. How many times have we said that? You should know that. And they don't know that because that's not what they're doing and that's not what's happening. So I broke it up into prep and do. 1, 2, 3 is prep. Make it clear for yourself. Why do I want this as an expectation? We skip that part. Why do I even want this? Why do I care? Know where you need it and get support and understand the why and be able to explain it because the people are going to ask. Then you need to meet with them, make it mutual. How many knows it's only an agreement if the other party agreed to it? So just because you said it, didn't make it an agreement if the other people didn't agree to it with you. Write them down. How many times we forget to write things down? Because they'll tell you it didn't happen. I blatantly have people tell me that. You didn't say that. That didn't happen. It's like we spent a whole hour in this office. Like, really? So solidify it with commitment. And with commitment means understanding what the consequences are if they don't meet the agreement. This is why people spin their wheels and get annoyed, and again, you want to pull your hair out because people don't meet the expectation, but we didn't outline what it was supposed to look like or the consequences for not meeting. So then I refer to as the gerbil wheel. You're on the gerbil wheel, going in circles. Okay? So, certain leader, knowing yourself, we talked about these, but another good quote from Pastor Rudy Ravens, an unexpressed expectation is a premeditated resentment. That means I'm already mad that you didn't do it because that was the expectation I had in my head, but I didn't actually express it to you. This happens a lot in marriage, right? You were supposed to do this, and he was like, you didn't tell me that. It's like, I'm pretty sure I told you, but you had the conversation in your head, you just failed to actually voice it. Same thing with your people, works on both sides, my expectations for your people. And then making sure you're communicating with each other in an active listening way is the only piece I'll spend on this. And making sure that you're actually taking the time to hear what they have to say. Don't just listen to respond. Don't wait for your turn to speak. So here's a couple of key things I like for people to remember. Respond appropriately to the conversation at hand. Oh man, I was late today. Okay, but did you get out there on the line and clock in? They were trying to explain something to you. You didn't respond appropriately. Make eye contact. Be here now. A very good TED Talk with a little girl on active listening. I recommend you look it up. She talked about being here now when you're actively listening. Don't pick up other people's monkeys. Let them solve their own problems. You just help talk them through it. And eliminate distractions while you're letting people empty their buckets. Very good tips. So as you start on this journey of self-discovery to be a better leader, take a SWOT. There's a free test, High Five. High5test.com gives you your free 20 strength finders for free instead of doing the test that costs a couple $100. And then really deep diving into understanding who you are, because when you understand who you are, you can better lead others. So key takeaways, practice the 3 keys, understanding your why, exhibiting those vital behaviors, and then using those 6 incentives to engage people. Focus on your strategies and tactics. Set clear boundaries and expectations with your people, being clear in communication, and then getting to know yourself. so that then you can lead others well. All right, so here's your homework. I give homework. I'm the only person who probably gives homework. So seek out and complete self-awareness assessments for yourself. Define what improvement you need and strengths to build on, and then also do it for your team members. Define you and your team's why. It's going to help. Define vital behaviors that we should be doing every day. Define clear roles and responsibilities, personal and team boundaries. What are your goals for the year? It's fourth quarter, so we should start prepping for 2020, right? I know we're getting ready to start working on our OPEX plans for next year. And then communicate. Don't hold it to yourself. Don't hold it just with your 3 people. Make sure you're explaining it to everybody. So leadership thought, be humble, be yourself. People would rather follow a leader who's always real than one who's always right. We're not always right. So take it in strides, get feedback. So here's the last piece. I want to talk to you about Jesse. So I introduced continuous improvement in our taste and flavor plants about 1.5 years ago. It's a new acquisition, 8 different plants. They hadn't had continuous improvement. So potential was identified. I saw that she was someone who worked really hard. Asked her did she have interest. She expressed interest. That was 2017. 2018, she was the formulations coordinator at first. We immediately promoted her into the CI coordinator role. We started having the weekly one-on-one, specialized in training. Then we moved into an IDP, individual development plan, that I created for her on what that would look like. Personal assessments, understood who she was, got her certified in Lean Six Sigma, right, building in those incentives for her. She now has a direct report, which is what I was talking about earlier. She's now leading corporate events and CI events with myself. And then she's getting promoted again here by the end of the month. And she's on track to become a regional CI manager. So just taking the time, implementing those skills with her. She comes with me. She was supposed to be here today. She didn't get a chance. Where she's able to hone these skills. She's required to do 24 events within this time frame as that I've set up with her for her IDP plan. As you can see here, there's major objectives that go hand in hand with company goals and objectives. And in 5-year span, she's moved from where she was just literally reviewing formulations every day to now she's leading corporate events. All because took the interest, took the time, led her well. She's going to replace me. That's your goal. Mentor yourself out of a job. So she could easily take my job and do it moving forward. And that was the whole key and the whole goal. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, your attention, engagement. Any questions before I know they're kicking me out, she already came. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
But isn't that also, I heard the other way, that if you make it too rigid or too clear, people will say it's not my job, and you cannot motivate them to actually do something outside of their time. How do you balance this kind of?
So I balance that because we should be defining roles and responsibilities based on objectives. So if I'm basing it on objectives and what we should be running after for the year, then it kind of transcends my job title, so to speak, if that makes sense. I wrapped. She was just asking that last question, sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Awesome sauce. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I'm not too familiar with it, but I'll have to check it out. Okay.
She'll share Facebook.
Okay. Awesome sauce. Thank you so much. Got it. You're awesome. Thank you. She'll put your flash on. There's the clicker. Yes, I know. That's why I'm doing this way. And we can talk. dark out here, yeah.
I had a question for you as well.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
okay.
for sure.
We can go
Yes,
out,
for
yes.
sure.
After this ladies, thank you.
Do you want the mic? Let's do this one first. Which one is your presentation? This one? There's 3 mics.
Test.